Today we're going to be removing the accessories from the LS motor: exhaust manifold, intake, power steering pump, alternator, water pump, AC, and AC bracket. Find out what I use these for. These are 95-gallon garbage bag. I'm D, and this is D-Mon's Garage. So some things that you'll want to have besides just basic tools that you'll never think about until you start doing it or start putting stuff back together and can't remember what came from where. Sandwich bags. Go buy your own. They're a couple of bucks. Don't steal your wife's. They're good for small bolts and stuff, and then start labeling them. Quart bags. Quart bags are good for things like head bolts and push rods. An inexpensive label maker. I suggested this before. I've had this one for years. They're invaluable. You start doing electric wiring and anything else, when you start putting new wiring, if you label everything, it'll make it a lot easier on you. Plus, you can label the bags, because I find that Sharpie always rubs off on them. These will occasionally fall off, but as long as you're careful, they usually stay on. One of the things you want to do is make sure that you keep the engine clean. When you crack it open, you don't want dirt and dust and metal shavings from working in the shop getting into that motor, because that will do damage further down the road. It will cause premature failure. So on the LS motor, we're going to break this down into smaller chunks. It should take you about an hour for each chunk. And then this way, if you need to go back and check something, you don't have to go through some stupidly long video just to find that little piece that you need. On an earlier video, we removed the LS harness. If you check up there, you can see it and then come right back. Don't worry. Oh, wait. No, really.
The first thing we're going to do is remove the main serpentine belt. It's a 15mm wrench, or 15mm. It moves clockwise to release it. So all you have to do is put a little force on it and then slide the belt off. Next, we'll remove the alternator, and then we'll remove the main accessory bracket. Generally, I suggest when you first start out using hand tools. This way you'll get used to how much pressure it takes to take a bolt off, and you're also getting used to hearing basic things and the muscle memory that it takes to pull bolts off and put them back on. There's one bolt behind the power steering pump. I would remove this one first. Next, I would remove the AC belt. This could be removed by putting a 3/8 ratchet inside the fitting there, and then turning counterclockwise. Next, remove the 4 bolts that hold the compressor to the mount, and then remove the 3 bolts that hold the mount to the engine block. I did shoot some of these videos out of order, so if you've noticed the cylinder heads are removed when I pull the water pump, that's why. I will be putting all these images up on the community page. You can check it out and get copies of them there.
So the next thing we're going to do, the water pump. In this case, you can tell this water pump's bad because there's a lot of play in this bearing. I wouldn't reuse it. Might throw it on the shelf and see if I can rebuild it, which there's probably no rebuild kits for these because nothing is rebuildable anymore. So you have 3 bolts here, and then there's another 3 bolts on the other side. They're all 10mm. You don't want to run these bolts completely out until you're ready. So this way, hopefully the water pump, in this case, the water pump is bad, so it's not that big of an issue. But you don't want to pull all the bolts and have the water pump fall, whatever big heavy thing is. Sometimes the gaskets will hold them, sometimes they won't. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to remove the coil packs. These are 10mm. Just go through, loosen them all up. It's all the longer ones, so you're going to need a long barrel 10mm, and we're going to pull them off with the bracket and all in one shot. We'll do this on both sides. Also, unplug your coil wires. In this case, these coil wires are all bad, and we'll be using new ones. We're going to pull the spark plug wires. If these are old and crusty, a lot of times they don't want to come off easily. Like I said, these are all junk. So sometimes you'll end up having to grab something like a pair of channel locks or something. And if you twist as you pull, a lot of times they come out easier. You will want to keep those, the metal sleeves on a lot of cases. Sometimes you'll need them, sometimes you won't. If you're running the stock exhaust, it's usually a good idea. It just makes it so the rubber on the wires doesn't dry out as much. The next thing we're going to do is pull the fuel rails and the fuel injectors. In this case, the 4 bolts are missing. There's supposed to be 2 here, or 1 here, and then 2 on the other side. And all you do is after you pull them, give the whole bar a wiggle as you're pulling up, and they'll come right loose. And put them off to the side. The injectors are held on by little metal and all you do is pull them out and pull the injector out. Like I said, there may be fuel involved in this, so just be careful. No open flames, that kind of thing. You are dealing with the fuel system, so you want to be careful. Next, we'll pull the intake manifold. There's 5 bolts on each side. They're 8mm. Generally, on bigger parts like this, especially when it comes to race car stuff, I start numbering all my big parts. This way, I know if there's anything weird about them, and this intake will get numbered, and then all the individual parts from here on out, for the most part, will get numbered. When you go to pull it, on the throttle body, there's 2 lines that those also need to be removed that go to the coolant passages. Because this is a Gen 3 and it's a stock block, these are what's known as cathedral port heads. So see the cathedral port? The other one is there's a rec port that is square like that, and it's a little bit wider. The 2 sensors in here are your 2 knock sensors. On the Gen 4s, they're actually on the bottom side of the block. And then next, we will pull the exhaust manifolds. These are 10mm. Forewarning, a lot of times you're going to have at least one of these break, and I will show you how to remove them using a welder. Generally, I would also suggest not reusing these bolts. Like I said, they tend to snap. They've been through hundreds of heat cycles, so it tends to make them brittle. Your best bet is just to buy new ones. They're not expensive, and it may save you a lot of trouble in the long run. The 2 that were actually missing had actually been snapped off in the block, so we'll have to weld and take those out. For the most part, there's some crust and some carbon up on the ports and stuff, but in this case, everything's looking pretty good. But that's to be expected with a junkyard motor. Next, we'll do the other side. Before you remove the passenger side, you need to take off the dipstick tube. 15mm. Take the bolt out, and you should be able to work the stick loose. By pulling up and wiggling, it'll slide right out. The use of the 95-gallon garbage bags is to cover your motor when you're not working on it. In this case, I use 95-gallon garbage bags because you can pretty much fit a full-blown nitrous Hemi underneath of one. So in the next video, we're going to be removing the top end of the engine, the cylinder heads, push rods, lifters, and valley cover. Now why don't you get out in the garage and do something?